The language of sacrifice, at least the way it is used in the Bible, is foreign to us. Therefore, it is difficult for us to grasp completely what Paul means when he urges us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, August 1st, 2020. The last passage in my canon of scripture passages that help us interpret the rest of the Bible is difficult and may even qualify as one of those passages that we need to interpret in light of other passages. But its meaning is clear enough that I will include it as a fitting end to this series of devotionals. Romans 12 begins with Paul telling us, "I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." Paul's readers in Rome would have had an immediate picture of what Paul meant, but not for the reasons you might expect. Persecution of Christians by the Roman Empire had not really begun yet in earnest when the Epistle to the Romans was likely written. Sure, there were sporadic martyrdoms here and there very early on, but they were not widespread just yet. So it is unlikely that Paul was referring to the idea that Christians in Rome should be prepared to become martyrs. So if that wasn't Paul's likely meaning, what was it? As you know, animal sacrifice was a common practice in the ancient world, though by Paul's day it was beginning to fade. But it was still widespread enough that his readers would have understood. Besides the practice of animal sacrifice at the temple in Jerusalem, it was also part of the worship of the various deities in Greek and Roman culture. You catch a few references to this in 1 Corinthians, where Paul talks about the ethics of Christians eating food that had been sacrificed to idols and was now for sale as meat in the markets. So far, so good. Sacrifices were a common element of the religious landscape in which the early church grew. Got it. But there is one more wrinkle that is important for us to know. The Roman emperor, whatever Caesar happened to sit on the throne, was regarded as a deity, and all Roman citizens were required to offer sacrifices to him. This all gets tangled up in complications as the Christians came to be regarded as distinct from the Jewish community, which was exempt in Paul's time from the requirements to offer sacrifices to Caesar. But that is a whole other discussion for another day. Obviously, faithful Christians could not offer sacrifices to Caesar or to the other gods, and Romans outside of Palestine didn't participate in Jewish sacrificial practices. So in a culture of sacrifice, what were Christians to do? Answer: present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, says Paul. Instead of literal animal sacrifice, Christians were to let their very lives, their words and their actions become a sort of sacrifice of total devotion to God and to God alone. No joining in with their friends and neighbors in offering sacrifices to the gods. No joining in with their friends and neighbors in offering sacrifices to Caesar. Instead, their sacrifice was to bear witness to their friends and neighbors to the redeeming and reconciling love of God in Jesus Christ. So why do I include this in my canon? Because we are still called as Christian people to present our bodies, our very lives, to God as living sacrifices in which we continue to bear witness to Jesus Christ and to conform our words and our actions ever more to the God who has adopted us into this holy family. we are supposed to, in our lives, offer everything that we have and everything that we are to God. That's why I include this short passage in my canon of really important scripture passages that help us interpret the rest of the Bible. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.